So we want to look at a problem that involves a piecewise function modeling the cost of a car rental on a day rate as well as a mileage rate. So what we'd like to do is we'd like to write an equation that represents the situation, and then we would like to graph that equation. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to separate out each of the two parts of the cost associated with this rental charge. We're being charged $4.95 per day plus 10 cents per mile for renting the car. Now we know, in addition to that, that we're only going to rent the car for up to 3 days, and that the company will only reimburse us for up to 50 miles per day. So we're going to incorporate that information into our equation. So the first thing we want to do is we want to figure out what the flat rental fee is per day and write an equation for that, and then we want to come up with a separate equation for mileage, and we'll put those together. So the first thing that we know is we want the rental charge by days. And so the per day rate is $4.95. Now, that means that if I rent it for 1 day, I get charged $4.95. If I rent it for 2 days, then I get charged 2 times $4.95. And if I rent it for 3 days, then I get charged 3 times $4.95. So that means the equation for the total rental cost, the total rental fees by days, is going to be $4.95 times the number of days. So D is the number of days. Now, the mileage cost is going to be similar. Now, the mileage charge is being charged per mile, so the per mile rate is 10 cents. And that means that if you go 1 mile, you get charged 10 cents. But if you go 2 miles, you get charged 20 cents. And if you go 10 miles, it's 10 cents times 10. And so the total mileage cost is 10 cents times the number of miles, where M is the number of miles. So that means the total cost to rent the car is the cost per day. So that's our $4.95 times days plus the cost per mile, which is going to be 0.01, or sorry, 10 M. Now, the other thing that we know is that we have to keep this mileage rate between 0 and 50 miles per day. So what we're going to do is we're going to create a cost function in function notation, and we're going to simplify this a little bit by assuming that we actually are going to drive between 0 and 50 miles every day. So the cost is $4.95 D plus 0.01 M. Now, if we do indeed drive between 0 and 50 miles per day, then we can simplify this so that the cost only depends on the number of miles. And the sort of day information is buried inside the function. That way we can graph it, because if we have 2 variables in the equation, we're going to need 3D graphing, and we don't have that. So what we're going to do is then we're going to evaluate this as cost in terms of mileage alone, and we're going to put in a bracket. Now, for the first day, day equals 1, we're going to have our mileage charge plus the single day charge for the mileage. And this is going to imply apply for 0 miles, although why would we rent a car if we're not going to take it anywhere? So slightly above 0 miles, and then all the way up to 50 miles for that first day. Now for the second day, we're going to do something very similar. We're going to say 0.10 m, but now we have 2 days. So if we multiply $4.95 by 2 for the second day, the fixed rental cost is now $990. But that's only going to apply between 50 miles, slightly above 50 miles, and up to 100 miles. And then for the third day, again, our mileage function stays the same, but now we're renting the car for 3 days, and if we multiply $4.95 by 3, then we get $14.85, and this will kick in after 100 miles, but less than or equal to 150 miles. Now, for the graphing program, in order to actually look at a picture of this, we're actually going to need to have m be replaced with an x variable. So I'm going to copy this function m with x for the graphing program, and I'm just going to copy this function. This does not require us to do any hard thinking at this point. We just need our cost to be in terms of x and not m, just to make it compatible with the software. And m has to be replaced everywhere. And then finally, we're going to go to a website called graphfree.com. And this website is set up so that we can graph piecewise functions. And so we're going to use that as our piecewise function grapher. So if we go there, we're going to scroll down and select Start Graphing. Now initially the graph comes up as just a regular simple function where there's not a bunch of pieces. We're going to scroll down in this drop-down menu and select Piecewise. And so now we have 3 pieces. If we need more pieces, we can go to these other plots. But we only have 3, so we're okay. Now, the first function piece is 0, 1, x plus 495, 4.95. And this is going to apply from 0 pounds to 50 pounds, but this isn't quite the inequality we want, because we don't want to include 0, because, again, if you're driving 0 miles, then you have no reason to rent the car. So we're going to use this inequality. And I'm going to go ahead and change all of my inequalities to this now because they should all agree with each other. The second piece was that same mileage charge plus now for 2 days rental, which applied from 50 to 100. And then the second piece, $14.95, from 100 to 150. Now let's check some of our settings. We do want Cartesian. Our minimum, we don't need it to be negative at all. We're starting our x values, our mileage values, at 0, so we can make that 0. The maximum x value, though, is 150, so we need to fix that. 1 tick for 150 ticks is too much, so let's make this 15. The y min, again, it's always going to be positive. The y max, now what's the maximum value this section can have? Well, this is about $15, and 150 times this piece is also about $15. So let's make this 30. And y ticks will make 5. Full grid lines, tick labels, let's every other line. X-axis label, so it's always a good idea to label your graph appropriately. So our X label is in mileage, and the Y-axis label is rental cost. Okay, I think we're ready. Hit create plot and see what happens. Okay, so here we get a sort of nice condensed version, and then there's a sort of blown up version down here. You can copy either one of these, copy image, and paste it back into our function. And so this is our graph. We have our rental cost going here, and we have our mileage going here. You can see our open circles, that means 0 is not included. And it goes up to a closed circle when we get to 50 miles. And then it jumps to an open circle. These have to be lined up properly because if these were two closed circles, this would not be a function. Remember, your function has to pass the vertical line test. And so this open circle takes care of that. And then the rental cost jumps, and then that continues smoothly for a while until you get to the next day, and then you see this jump again, and so it continues. So that is our graphing piecewise functions in graphfree.